Lonely single mom drove a drunk vampire king boss home. Never expected he'd fall in love for her. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. It was a late evening in New York City, the kind of night where the lights of the skyline barely pierced the cold, misty fog that had settled over the streets. Mia, a single mom, had just finished her third shift of the day at a diner and was barely keeping her eyes open. She was exhausted, worn down by life's relentless demands. With 2 kids at home and barely enough to pay for the bills, Mia didn't have time for much else. But tonight, just as she was about to clock out, she got a call that would change everything. Mia, we need you to pick up a guest at the Silver Fox. He's had too much to drink. Don't keep him waiting, her manager said briskly before hanging up. Mia sighed, her shoulders slumping. Another favor to ask, another person to care for, even if she barely had the energy to care for herself. She grabbed her jacket, tossed her apron into the back of her locker, and headed out into the chilly night air. The Silver Fox was a high-end bar in the heart of the city, the kind of place where the rich and powerful came to unwind. Mia wasn't used to this world of opulence. But tonight, she had to enter it. She parked her old sedan in front of the bar, its engine sputtering in protest. Stepping out, she adjusted her scarf and walked up the steps, her worn boots clicking on the marble. The doorman gave her a nod and opened the door. Inside, the hum of conversations and the clinking of glasses filled the air. Mia spotted the man right away. He was sitting at the bar, his sharp features almost glowing in the dim light. His suit was flawless, tailored to perfection, and his dark hair was slightly disheveled, as though he had been running his hands through it. But it was his eyes that caught her attention. Cold, amber eyes that seemed to see right through her. He didn't look drunk, but when he stood up, swaying slightly, Mia knew he had definitely had more than his fair share. You must be the one they called, Mia said, trying to sound confident despite the unease that was creeping into her chest. The man blinked, then smiled. A slow, knowing smile that made her heart race for reasons she couldn't explain. I think I've been called a lot of things tonight, but yes, I suppose that's me. He chuckled softly, clearly amused by his own situation. Mia helped him to his feet, wrapping his arm around her shoulder to support him as they made their way out of the bar. As they stepped into the cold night air, she noticed how the world around them seemed to shrink, like it was just the 2 of them in the universe. But she didn't have time to dwell on it. She was just trying to get him home and get on with her night. Little did she know, this simple act of kindness was the beginning of a journey that would change her life forever. As she drove him back to his luxurious penthouse, she couldn't help but feel a strange pull toward him, a connection that she couldn't explain. And for the first time in a long while, she felt as if she wasn't just another invisible face in the crowd. She was something more. Something was about to change. As Mia drove through the quiet streets, the distant hum of the city's nightlife felt like a world far away from her reality. The man beside her, still leaning heavily against the passenger seat, hadn't spoken much since they left the Silver Fox. His amber eyes glimmered in the streetlight, and Mia couldn't help but steal glances at him. Her curiosity piqued despite herself. Who was he? What was his story? And why did he seem so different from the others she'd met? She shook her head, trying to dismiss the thoughts. It didn't matter. She was just doing her job, getting him home so she could finally collapse into her bed. He was a stranger, a man who had been too drunk to take care of himself. That was all. She had no reason to care about him. Yet, when he turned to her and spoke in a voice that was soft but commanding, she felt her heart skip a beat. You've been very kind, Mia. You didn't have to do this. Not for someone like me. She glanced over at him, confusion written across her face. What do you mean? You needed help. Anyone would have done the same thing. His smile was slow, almost sad, as he looked out the window. No, not anyone. Not everyone would have helped a stranger like me. I'm not like the others. Mia didn't know what to make of that. She wasn't one to ask personal questions, especially not to a man who seemed to have everything. The car's engine hummed along the road as the minutes stretched on. She could feel his presence in the car, even though he wasn't speaking much. There was something off about him, but she didn't want to think too much about it. She had enough on her plate. As they neared his penthouse, she couldn't help but notice the contrast between her beat-up car and the sleek luxury building that loomed ahead. The moment they arrived, he didn't get out of the car immediately. Instead, he looked at her with those piercing eyes that seemed to look right through her. "Thank you," he said, his voice softer this time, "for seeing me as more than just a man in need." Mia shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her fingers gripping the steering wheel. "It's no big deal," she muttered, not sure how to respond. But before she could say anything else, he opened the door and got out, leaving her with a strange sense of longing she couldn't quite understand. She watched as he disappeared inside the building, his figure blending with the night. Mia sat there for a moment, staring at the grand entrance, the lights from the lobby casting a warm glow on the pavement. She shook her head, telling herself it didn't matter. She was just a woman doing her job. She had to focus on the things that mattered: her kids, her bills, her future. But as she drove away, she couldn't help but feel like something had shifted, like the night had changed something deep inside her. The days that followed were no less demanding. Mia worked long hours, juggling multiple jobs just to keep things together. But the man, the one she had helped, kept crossing her mind. Every now and then, she would catch herself wondering what had become of him. Was he okay? Had he been drunk enough to forget everything by now? Mia wasn't one to dwell on things she couldn't control, but this felt different. She didn't know why. One evening, as she finished her shift at the diner, she was just about to head home when her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "Mia, it's Adrian. I wanted to thank you for your kindness the other night. Can we meet for coffee?" Adrian? She remembered the name. It was the man from the Silver Fox, the one she had driven home. Her heart skipped a beat. She stared at the message for a few moments before typing a quick reply. "Sure, I have time tomorrow." The next day, Mia arrived at the cafe, her nerves getting the best of her. What would he want with her? She was just a single mom with no real prospects. What did a man like him see in her? When Adrian arrived, it was as if time had stopped. He was dressed in a dark jacket and jeans, casual but still impossibly put together. He had an air of quiet power that surrounded him, yet there was something softer about him today. He smiled at her as he sat down across from her, and for a moment, Mia felt like she was the only one in the room. "Mia," he began, his voice smooth and confident, "I want to apologize for the way I acted that night. I wasn't in the best shape." She smiled faintly, unsure of what to say. "It's fine. You were drunk. It happens." He chuckled lightly. "Yes, it does. But what doesn't happen often is someone helping me without expecting anything in return. You're different, Mia." Mia felt her cheeks flush. She didn't know how to respond to that. She wasn't used to being the center of attention, let alone the subject of someone's admiration. As they continued to talk, she started to notice the subtle ways he watched her. There was a deep intensity in his gaze, as though he was studying her, trying to figure her out. And the more they spoke, the more she realized there was something about Adrian, something that went beyond the surface. The man she had helped that night was no ordinary person. She wasn't sure what it was, but something about him made her feel both nervous and alive in ways she couldn't explain. And for the first time in a long while, Mia felt a flicker of hope in her heart. As Mia walked into the cafe the next day, she felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness. It had been a long time since she had done something like this, sitting down for coffee with someone she barely knew. And not just anyone. Adrian, the man who had changed everything in just one brief encounter. Her heart raced as she took a seat at the table where he had already arrived. His presence was magnetic, commanding attention without even trying. He smiled at her when she sat down, and for a moment, it felt like the whole world paused. "Mia, thank you for coming," Adrian said, his voice smooth and confident, sending a shiver down her spine. His smile was warm, yet there was something more to it, a hidden depth that she couldn't quite place. "Of course," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "You asked, and I'm here." They exchanged pleasantries as the server brought them their coffee. The conversation started off light, but it didn't take long before Adrian's gaze grew more intense, his focus entirely on her. He was studying her, and Mia couldn't help but feel a little self-conscious under the weight of his attention. "You know, Mia," Adrian began after a brief silence, "I've been thinking a lot about our conversation the other night. About what you did for me. You didn't just help me because you had to. You helped me because you saw something in me, didn't you? Mia shifted in her seat, unsure of what to say. She had always been the type of person to help others, but this time, something about it felt different. I guess I just wanted to help, she said, her voice soft but steady. You looked like you needed it, and it was the right thing to do. Adrian leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing slightly as he studied her. You're not like the others, Mia. You don't ask for anything in return. Most people would see someone like me and just walk away. But you didn't. Mia's heart skipped a beat at his words. She wasn't sure what to make of them. She had always been a skeptic, not one to fall for flattery or charm, but with Adrian, it was different. There was something about the way he spoke, the way he looked at her, that made her feel like she was more than just a waitress. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen. Adrian's voice softened as he continued. I want to be honest with you, Mia. I've lived a long life, seen things that most people would never believe. I've had countless people come in and out of my life, but none of them have ever made me feel the way you do. Mia's breath caught in her throat, and for a moment, she couldn't speak. What was he saying? What did he mean by that? Was it possible? Could she really be the one to change him? To break through the walls he had built around himself? She shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts. Adrian, I don't know what you're talking about, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I'm just a single mom with a job to do. I don't know what you think I am. Adrian smiled, his eyes softening as he reached across the table and gently took her hand. You don't need to be anything other than yourself, Mia. That's what I like about you. You're real. His touch sent a jolt through her, and Mia quickly withdrew her hand, her mind racing. This wasn't supposed to happen. She wasn't supposed to feel this way. I can't do this, she muttered, shaking her head. I'm just not. I'm not the kind of person you think I am. Adrian's expression grew serious, his eyes never leaving hers. Mia, I'm not asking you to be anything else. I'm asking you to let me in. Let me show you a different world. One where you don't have to struggle, one where you don't have to carry all the weight on your own. She could feel the weight of his words pressing down on her. Could she really do that? Could she trust him? Could she take that step into the unknown? Mia looked away, trying to compose herself. I don't know if I can. Adrian, she said softly. I have my kids to think about. I have responsibilities. I can't just throw all that away. Adrian's gaze softened, and for the first time, he seemed vulnerable. I'm not asking you to throw anything away, Mia. I'm asking you to give me a chance. A chance to show you that life can be different. That we can be different. Mia's heart pounded in her chest, and she took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. This was too much, too fast. But somewhere deep inside, she felt a spark of hope. A small, fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, Adrian was telling the truth. Maybe he wasn't like the others. Maybe he could be the one to change everything. As the minutes stretched into an uncomfortable silence, Mia finally looked up at Adrian. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, the raw emotion that lay just beneath the surface. And for the first time in a long while, Mia felt like she had a choice. A real choice. A chance to step into a new world. With a shaky breath, she nodded slowly. Okay, I'll give you a chance. Adrian's smile was slow, but genuine. And in that moment, Mia realized that this was the beginning of something she couldn't yet understand. But she was ready to find out. As the days passed, Mia found herself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. She had agreed to give Adrian a chance, but she didn't know what that would mean for her life. She was just a single mother, struggling to make ends meet. And here she was, sitting across from a man who seemed to have everything, wealth, power, and an intensity that made her heart race. It was all too much, too fast, and Mia wasn't sure if she was ready for it. But she couldn't deny that there was something about Adrian. Something that pulled her in, despite her better judgment. One evening, after she had dropped off her kids at their grandmother's house, Mia decided to meet Adrian again. He had invited her to a quiet dinner at one of the city's most exclusive restaurants, a place so fancy that she felt out of place just stepping inside. The moment she arrived, the hostess led her through the lavish dining room, past elegantly dressed patrons, to a secluded table by the window. Adrian was already there, looking effortlessly handsome in a tailored suit that seemed to make the room dim in comparison. His amber eyes locked onto hers as she approached, and for a moment, Mia felt a flutter in her chest. You look beautiful tonight, Adrian said, his voice low and sincere. Mia couldn't help but blush. Thank you. I don't really belong here. Adrian chuckled softly, the sound like music in the quiet room. You belong wherever you want to, Mia. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. As the evening progressed, the conversation between them flowed easily, and Mia found herself laughing and sharing things she hadn't told anyone in years. Adrian listened to her with a focus and intensity that made her feel like she was the most important person in the world. She could tell that he was genuine, that he truly cared about what she had to say. As the night wore on, Mia's reservations began to fade. She had never felt this way before. With him, she felt seen, understood, and valued. For once, she wasn't just a mother struggling to survive. She was a woman, a person, someone who mattered. But just as she began to let her guard down, Adrian's tone shifted. He leaned in slightly, his voice barely above a whisper. Mia, there's something I need to tell you. Mia's heart skipped a beat. She had a feeling that this wasn't going to be an easy conversation. What is it? She asked, her voice cautious. Adrian paused for a moment, as if weighing his words carefully. I'm not just anyone, Mia. I'm not like other men. His eyes locked with hers, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of something dark and dangerous behind the intensity. I am the Vampire King, and there are things about me that you won't understand, but I want you to. I want you to know the truth. Mia felt a chill run down her spine. She had known there was something different about him. The way he carried himself, the way his eyes seemed to pierce through her, it was all so otherworldly. But to hear him say it so plainly was a shock. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. The weight of his words hung in the air between them, and her mind raced as she tried to process what he had just said. You're a vampire? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Adrian nodded, his expression serious. Yes, I've lived for centuries, and I've seen things that would make most people's blood run cold. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that I've never met anyone like you, Mia. Mia's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to make sense of what he was saying. A vampire king? It was absurd. But something in his eyes told her that he wasn't lying. She had always thought that supernatural stories were just that, stories. But now, sitting here with Adrian, she wasn't so sure. Why are you telling me this now? She asked, her voice shaking. Adrian's gaze softened, and he reached across the table, his hand hovering near hers. Because I need you to understand what's at stake. I need you to know that I'm not just offering you a life of luxury. I'm offering you a chance to be part of something much bigger, something you can't even imagine. But it's not without danger. There are enemies who would do anything to tear us apart. Mia. Mia felt her mind racing. This was insane. She had never asked for any of this. All she wanted was a better life for her kids, a life that didn't involve danger or lies. But now, Adrian was asking her to step into a world that was far beyond anything she had ever known. What do you want from me? She asked, her voice trembling with uncertainty. Adrian smiled softly, his amber eyes never leaving hers. I want you, Mia. I want you to be by my side, to trust me, and to see the world through my eyes. But most of all, I want you to understand that we can be stronger together. You have a power inside you, something you don't even realize yet, and I want to help you unlock it. Mia's mind was spinning. She didn't know what to say, what to think. Part of her wanted to run, to get as far away from this strange, dangerous world as possible. But another part of her, a part she hadn't even known was there, wanted to stay. She had never felt this alive, this needed, this important. As the night drew to a close, Adrian stood up and extended his hand to her. Think about it, Mia. I'm not going anywhere. And neither are you, not if I have anything to say about it. Mia hesitated for a moment before taking his hand, her heart racing. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she had a choice. And that choice was going to change everything. The following days after their dinner were filled with a whirlwind of emotions for Mia. Adrian's revelation had thrown her into a storm of disbelief and curiosity. She had known there was something different about him, but the idea that he was a vampire king was too much to wrap her head around. And yet, in the depth of his amber eyes, Mia saw nothing but sincerity. She had never been one to believe in fantastical stories, but Adrian's presence made her feel like maybe the world she knew was only a small part of something much bigger. She was torn between wanting to run away from this dangerous world he was offering her, and a strange pull to step into it, to see where it could take her. Over the next few weeks, Their meetings became more frequent. Each time they spent together, Adrian revealed more about his life, his long existence as a vampire, and the complex world he lived in. But every time Mia tried to ask about the dangers he mentioned, about the enemies that could tear them apart, he would change the subject or assure her that it wasn't something she needed to worry about. Mia, however, couldn't ignore the feeling that something was off. There were always whispers around Adrian, people who seemed to be watching him from the shadows, and sometimes, when they were together, the air would grow heavy with a tension she couldn't quite understand. One afternoon, Adrian invited her to a lavish gala in one of his many mansions, saying it would be a chance for her to meet his world. Mia was hesitant, but curiosity won out. She couldn't resist the allure of this new life he was offering her. When she arrived, she was stunned. The grand ballroom was filled with people dressed in the finest clothes, glistening jewels adorning their necks and wrists. But as she scanned the room, Mia noticed the strange atmosphere. The people here didn't look entirely human. Their movements were too fluid, their eyes too intense. And the way they interacted with one another, it was as if they were all part of a secret world Mia had no place in. She clung to Adrian's side as he led her through the crowd. The whispers were almost audible now, and Mia felt a sharp chill run through her, her skin prickling under their gaze. "Relax," Adrian whispered, his voice soft but firm. "You're with me. No one here will harm you." But Mia wasn't sure if she believed him. As they walked deeper into the crowd, she saw a group of individuals gathered around a table, their eyes fixed on her. They looked at her as if she were a puzzle they were trying to figure out. One of them, a tall woman with long dark hair, stepped forward and smiled at Adrian. "I see you've brought her," the woman said, her voice smooth as velvet. The human. Adrian's grip tightened on Mia's hand, a protective gesture that sent a rush of warmth through her. "Yes, this is Mia. I would appreciate it if you kept your opinions to yourselves." The woman's smile faltered slightly, but she didn't argue. "Of course, my lord." As they continued walking, Mia couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. These people weren't just strange, they were dangerous. And yet, she couldn't help but be drawn to them, to the world they represented. That night, as the gala wore on, Mia found herself standing on the balcony, looking out at the city below. The cool night air kissed her skin, but she still felt hot with the strange energy of the night. She needed a moment to breathe. "Mia," Adrian's voice broke through her thoughts. She turned to find him standing just behind her, his dark eyes watching her with an intensity that made her heart race. "Are you all right?" Mia nodded, but the smile she gave him was weak. "I'm just not used to all of this. It's overwhelming." Adrian stepped closer, his presence enveloping her. "I know it's a lot, but you're stronger than you think. And you're not alone." His voice was steady, comforting, and Mia wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that this strange world, with all its power and danger, was somehow meant for her. But deep down, she knew there was something more to Adrian's life, something he wasn't telling her. Something that could change everything. As if reading her thoughts, Adrian reached out and gently cupped her cheek. "You're starting to understand, aren't you?" he murmured. "There's a darkness in my world, Mia. But there's light here, too, and I want you to be part of it." Mia's heart fluttered at his words. She wanted to believe him, to trust him. But the more she learned about his world, the more she felt like she was stepping into something she couldn't control. "What if I'm not ready for all of this?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Adrian's eyes softened, and for a moment, he seemed almost vulnerable. "Then take your time," he said, his thumb brushing over her skin. "I won't rush you. But know this. Whatever you decide, you'll always have a place with me. I want you with me, Mia. Forever." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and uncertain. Mia's heart thudded in her chest as she tried to process everything. She had a family to care for, a life that didn't belong in this world of danger and darkness. But Adrian was something else entirely. And somehow, in the midst of the chaos and uncertainty, she realized she was already beginning to fall for him. Days passed, and Mia found herself drawn deeper into Adrian's world. Each moment with him felt like a step closer to a life she had never imagined. He was a constant presence, not just physically but emotionally as well. His words, his touch, his gaze, everything about him seemed to pull her in, and yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than he was letting on. The more time they spent together, the more she saw glimpses of the darker side of his world. Adrian would speak of his enemies, of the political games he had to play in order to maintain his power, but always with a sense of distance, as if it was all just a part of his life, something he had accepted long ago. It was when Mia began to see the cracks in his facade that she realized just how much danger was involved in being with him. One evening, Adrian invited her to one of his private estates, a sprawling mansion on the outskirts of the city. The moment Mia stepped into the house, she was struck by its coldness. The high ceilings, the marble floors, the dim lighting. It all felt too grand, too empty. She couldn't help but feel small in such an imposing place. But Adrian seemed right at home, moving through the space with the confidence of someone who had spent centuries in its walls. "Do you like it?" Adrian asked, his voice soft but curious. Mia glanced around, unsure of how to respond. "It's beautiful," she said finally. "But it feels empty." Adrian's gaze softened, and he stepped closer to her, his presence overwhelming. "I've never been good at filling this place with warmth," he admitted. "I've lived alone for so long that it's become part of me. But with you here, it's different." His words hit Mia harder than she expected. She had never imagined that someone like Adrian, someone so powerful, so distant, would be capable of vulnerability. It made her heart ache for him, but it also made her question her own feelings. Was she really ready to step into this world, a world that seemed so dangerous and complicated? "Adrian," Mia began, her voice trembling slightly, "I need to know the truth. You keep talking about your enemies, about your world, but I still don't understand. What exactly am I getting myself into?" Adrian paused, his expression hardening for a moment before he took her hand gently in his. "I've tried to protect you from it, Mia, but I can't hide it any longer. The truth is, my enemies have known about you for a while. The moment I brought you into my life, it made you a target." Mia's heart stopped for a moment as the weight of his words settled over her. "A target?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Adrian nodded, his jaw tight with the weight of his responsibilities. "Yes, there are factions in this world that would use you against me, Mia. They know that you're important to me, and that makes you a threat to them. But I won't let them harm you. I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe." Mia's mind raced as she processed everything he had said. She had known there was danger, but hearing it like this, hearing it from Adrian himself, made it feel real. She had always been a fighter, but this was something completely different. "I don't want to be your weakness," Mia said, her voice firm, though her heart pounded with uncertainty. "I don't want to be dragged into your battles." Adrian's expression softened, and he pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "You're not a weakness, Mia. You're the only strength I've had in centuries. I don't care what it costs, I'll protect you." For a long moment, they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, the weight of their reality pressing down on them both. Mia didn't know what the future held, but she knew that her life had already changed in ways she couldn't reverse. She was in this, whether she wanted to be or not. And deep down, a part of her wasn't sure she wanted to walk away. "I'm scared, Adrian," she admitted, her voice muffled against his chest. "I don't know if I can handle this. All of this." Adrian kissed the top of her head, his touch gentle and reassuring. "You don't have to handle it alone, Mia. I'm here, and I'll never leave you. Together, we can face anything." For the first time in a long while, Mia believed him. In his arms, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she could face whatever was coming. But she couldn't ignore the nagging feeling in the back of her mind. The more she learned about Adrian's world, the more she realized just how much she still didn't know. And as much as she wanted to trust him completely, a part of her still wondered if she truly understood what she was getting into. The next day, as they sat together in the quiet of his mansion, Mia's phone buzzed with a message. She glanced at it, surprised to see a message from her sister. "Mia, I think someone's been following you." The message was short, but the urgency in it made her heart skip a beat. "Adrian," she said, her voice tense. "I think I'm in more danger than I realized." Adrian looked at her, his expression darkening as he stood up. "I know. We need to move quickly." Adrian's eyes darkened as he looked at the phone in Mia's hand. Her sister's message echoed in his mind, and the danger that had been lurking at the edges of their lives suddenly felt too close for comfort. Mia's fingers trembled as she put the phone down, the weight of the message settling heavily on her chest. "We need to move now," Adrian said, his voice low but filled with authority. Mia nodded, a knot forming in her stomach. She had known this was coming, the danger that had been lurking in the shadows, but now it was real, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for it. Adrian led her through the grand hall of the mansion, his presence steady and powerful, but Mia couldn't shake the feeling of dread creeping up her spine. She had been living in a world that seemed so different from the one she had known, but now it was clear that the life Adrian had introduced her to was far more dangerous than she could have imagined. As they reached the front door, Adrian turned to her, his expression softening. "Stay close to me," he said, his voice tender but firm. "I won't let anything happen to you." Mia's heart raced, and she tried to steady her breathing. She wanted to believe him, but part of her was still uncertain. She had never been part of a world like this, a world filled with danger and power, and she didn't know if she was strong enough to survive it. "I know," she whispered, her voice shaky. "But what if—" "No," Adrian interrupted, his tone firm but gentle. "You're not alone in this. We'll face this together, Mia. We always will." The words were comforting, but they didn't erase the fear that had taken root inside her. Adrian's grip on her hand tightened, and together they walked into the night, the cool air biting at their skin. They didn't speak as they drove, the tension between them palpable. Mia's mind raced with 1,000 questions, but she didn't know where to start. "Do you think they know where I am?" she asked finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Adrian's jaw tightened, and he didn't answer right away. He focused on the road ahead, his expression unreadable. "I'm not sure," he said after a moment. "But we need to be prepared. Whoever is following you isn't just anyone. They've been watching you, and they know how important you are to me." Mia swallowed hard. The weight of his words hit her with full force. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice trembling with uncertainty. Adrian's gaze flicked to her for a moment, and then he returned his focus to the road. "We take you somewhere safe. We'll figure out who's behind this, and we'll protect you." He glanced at her again, his eyes softening. "I won't let anyone hurt you." Mia nodded, her heart heavy with the enormity of the situation. She had always been the protector, always the one who had to make sure everyone else was safe. But now, it was her turn to be protected, and it felt strange, unfamiliar. She wasn't used to being the one who needed saving. As they drove through the dark streets, Mia's thoughts wandered to the life she had left behind. Her kids, her home, her quiet, simple world. It felt so far away now, like a dream she couldn't reach. But she couldn't go back. Not now. Not when Adrian was involved. Not when the danger was so real. The car finally stopped in front of a high-security building, a place Mia had never seen before. It looked like a fortress, its tall iron gates looming ominously in the dark. "We're here," Adrian said, his voice low. Mia didn't move. "Where are we?" she asked, her voice tight with uncertainty. Adrian turned to her, his face shadowed in the dim light. "This is my safe house," he said, his voice calm but firm. "It's the one place they won't be able to get to you." Mia's heart skipped a beat. She had no idea what to expect, but she didn't have a choice. She followed Adrian as he led her inside, the heavy doors closing behind them with a thud. Inside, the atmosphere was completely different. The stark, sterile feel of the mansion was gone, replaced by a warmth that made Mia feel like she could breathe again. The walls were adorned with old paintings and rich fabrics, and the flicker of candlelight cast soft shadows on the floors. But even here, Mia could sense the underlying tension. She wasn't safe, not completely, and she wasn't sure if she could ever be. "I'll stay with you tonight," Adrian said, his voice quiet but reassuring. "Tomorrow, we'll figure out who's behind this." Mia nodded, grateful for his presence but still unsure of what the future held. As she sat down on the couch, Adrian sat beside her, his eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her heart race. "Mia," he said softly, "I know this is all overwhelming, but I need you to trust me. You're safe here. Nothing will happen to you." She looked at him, her mind spinning with confusion and fear, but also with a strange sense of trust. She had always been independent, always the one who had to take care of herself. But with Adrian, she felt something different, a connection that went beyond anything she had ever experienced. "I'm trying," Mia said, her voice soft. "I really am." Adrian smiled, his expression softening as he gently took her hand. "I know you are. And that's all I need." For the first time in a long while, Mia felt like she was truly seen. But she couldn't shake the nagging feeling in the back of her mind. The danger wasn't over. It was just beginning. The next few days were filled with tension and uncertainty. Mia had hoped that being in the safe house with Adrian would offer some comfort, but instead, she found herself more on edge than ever. The walls of the mansion, though grand and beautiful, felt suffocating. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were just one step away from danger. Adrian had done his best to reassure her, but she could tell that something was brewing beneath the surface. He was always calm, always in control, but Mia could sense that he was constantly on alert. She had never seen him this way before. Every movement he made, every glance he shot toward the door, spoke volumes about the danger he was facing. He was fighting battles that she didn't fully understand, and the more she learned, the more it seemed like the world he inhabited was far darker and more complicated than anything she had ever known. It was on the fourth night that everything changed. Adrian had been receiving cryptic messages on his phone all day, and although he kept his distance, Mia could feel the anxiety radiating from him. The evening had started like any other, with Adrian keeping her company in the drawing room, the large fireplace crackling as they spoke quietly about anything and everything. But as the night wore on, Mia could tell that something had shifted. Adrian's calm demeanor had faltered, and now he was pacing the room, his jaw tight, his eyes darkened with what Mia could only describe as fear. "Adrian," she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What's going on?" He stopped, his gaze locking with hers, and for the first time, Mia saw something in his eyes she hadn't noticed before: vulnerability. "They found us," he said, his voice low and tense. "I knew it was only a matter of time." Mia's heart skipped a beat. Who's found us?" Adrian didn't answer immediately, his eyes flashing to the window, where the night outside was still and silent. "My enemies," he said finally, his voice grim. "They've known about you from the start. And now, they're closing in. They won't stop until they have what they want." Mia felt a chill run down her spine. The weight of his words hit her hard, but it wasn't just the danger that scared her. It was the fact that Adrian was involved in something so dangerous, something so far beyond her comprehension. She had thought that she could handle whatever came their way, but now, in the face of his enemies, she wasn't sure. "What do we do?" Mia asked, her voice shaking. Adrian stepped closer to her, his presence overwhelming. "We fight," he said simply. "We protect what's ours." His hand brushed against hers, and Mia felt a surge of warmth spread through her. Despite the fear, despite the danger, there was something comforting about his touch, something that made her feel like she wasn't alone in this. He reached for her hand, pulling her close. "Mia, you need to listen to me," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Whatever happens, don't let them take you. If they get to you, it's over. Do you understand?" Mia nodded, though her mind was still racing. The idea of being taken, of being caught in the crossfire of a battle she didn't understand, was terrifying. But she trusted Adrian. She had to. "I won't let them take me," she said, her voice steady now, though her heart was still pounding in her chest. Adrian smiled, a small, reassuring smile, and kissed the top of her head. "Good. Stay close to me, and don't let anyone get in your way." They spent the next few hours preparing, with Adrian telling her everything she needed to know. She had to be ready, he said, to protect herself if the worst came to pass. They couldn't afford to be caught off guard. Adrian had a network of allies, people who would help them, but even with their resources, Mia could tell that the odds were stacked against them. "We'll leave at first light," Adrian said as the night stretched on. "We'll go somewhere safer, somewhere they won't find us." Mia felt a pang of guilt. She had never asked for any of this, never wanted to be dragged into this dangerous world. But now, it was too late to turn back. She had already made her choice, and that choice had led her to Adrian. She wasn't going to walk away now, not when things were getting this intense. The next morning, just as the first light of dawn broke through the horizon, Adrian and Mia left the mansion, slipping into the shadows as they made their way to a safer location. Adrian's car was parked just outside the gates, ready to take them to a more secure place. Mia's heart raced as they drove through the empty streets, the weight of their situation sinking in. She had never felt so vulnerable in her life, and yet, there was a part of her that felt more alive than ever before. For better or for worse, she was in this world now, and there was no going back. As they reached their destination, a small, hidden estate that Adrian had arranged for them, Mia realized that they were only just beginning to fight for their lives. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going to let anyone take her away from the life she had started to build with Adrian. The morning after they had arrived at the hidden estate, Mia felt the weight of their situation more than ever. The house, though secure, felt foreign to her, like a place she was never meant to be. Adrian had tried to reassure her that it was their safest option, but the walls that had once seemed so protective now felt like a prison. He had made arrangements for them to stay there, far from the prying eyes of his enemies, but the tension in the air was palpable. As they walked through the corridors, Mia couldn't shake the sense that danger was never far away. The mansion was lavish, filled with artifacts and antiques that spoke of Adrian's long life. But for all its beauty, it was also stark, too cold, too empty. She missed the small comforts of her life back home. Her kids, the quiet evenings spent watching TV, the smell of home-cooked meals. Now, everything felt so distant, and Mia wasn't sure if she could ever find her place in this world. Adrian, however, seemed at ease. He moved through the space like he had done it 1,000 times before, his confidence unwavering. But even he couldn't escape the worry that hung in the air. The enemy was close, and as much as Mia wanted to ignore it, she couldn't. The truth was, she had become a part of this dangerous world, a world where there were no simple answers, no easy escapes. That afternoon, as they sat in the large library of the estate, Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it briefly before setting it aside, his face hardening. Mia knew immediately that something was wrong. She had seen that look on his face before, the one that signaled a battle, a confrontation. "What is it?" she asked, trying to keep the panic from creeping into her voice. Adrian turned to her, his eyes dark with the weight of the news. "They found the safe house," he said quietly. "They're coming for us." Mia's stomach dropped, the cold grip of fear seizing her heart. She had been trying to keep her nerves in check, to tell herself that everything would be okay, but now it was real. They weren't safe, not really. Adrian stood up, his tall frame filling the room. "We need to move. Now." Mia's pulse quickened as Adrian reached for her hand, his touch firm but gentle. "Stay close to me, Mia. Whatever happens, you stay with me." The urgency in his voice left no room for argument. They had no time to waste. The two of them made their way through the house, Adrian's presence a steadying force in the chaos. Mia had never seen him like this, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a sharp edge of command. She knew he wasn't just trying to protect her. He was trying to protect everything they had, everything they could still have. As they reached the garage, Mia felt a knot form in her stomach. They had no plan, no escape route, and all she could think of was how much her life had changed in such a short time. This was not the life she had envisioned, not the life she had worked so hard to create for herself and her kids. But now she was here, in this world with Adrian, and there was no going back. "Are you ready?" Adrian's voice broke through her thoughts, his eyes locking with hers. Mia nodded, though she wasn't sure if she was ready. But she had no choice. "I'm with you," she said, her voice steady despite the fear threatening to overwhelm her. Adrian gave her a brief smile, a flicker of warmth in his gaze. "I know, and we'll get through this. Together." As they climbed into the sleek black car that awaited them, Adrian started the engine, the low rumble of the car filling the silence. The drive through the winding roads of the estate felt surreal, as though everything was happening in slow motion. Mia sat beside Adrian, her heart racing, her thoughts a whirlwind. She couldn't believe how quickly her world had changed. From a simple life with her children to being caught in a deadly game she had never asked for. The streets outside blurred as they sped away from the mansion, heading into the unknown. Mia's mind raced with questions. Who was after them? What did they want? And most importantly, what was Adrian not telling her? She could see the strain in his features, the way his jaw tightened every time the car swerved around a corner. This wasn't just about them anymore. This was about his kingdom, his legacy, and Mia was now a part of it. As the car neared the edge of the city, Adrian spoke again, his voice a low murmur. "There's a place we can go," he said. "It's one of my allies' safe houses. It's the only place they won't find us." Mia nodded, trying to push down the growing sense of dread in her chest. She trusted Adrian, but the reality of their situation was hitting her harder than she had anticipated. She wasn't just a bystander anymore. She was in the heart of this dangerous world, a world she wasn't prepared for. How much longer? Mia asked, her voice tight. Adrian glanced at her briefly, his gaze unreadable. Not long. We'll be safe there. But we have to stay sharp. Mia's grip tightened on the seat as the city skyline receded in the distance. They were leaving behind the life she had known and stepping into a world that was far darker and more dangerous than she could have imagined. She didn't know what was waiting for them at the end of the road, but one thing was clear, there was no turning back now. And no matter what came next, she was in this with Adrian, for better or worse. The drive to the safe house felt like an eternity to Mia. The night had grown darker, and the streets outside the car window blurred with speed. Adrian's presence next to her was the only constant in the chaos, his focus fixed ahead, but there was a subtle tension in his movements. He wasn't speaking much, his silence louder than any words could be. Mia tried to keep her thoughts in check, but they raced as fast as the car. Who was chasing them? Who were these enemies that Adrian had been fighting for centuries? And most importantly, how much of this world was she really ready to face? The night air felt oppressive, and Mia couldn't escape the nagging fear that clung to her. The life she had known seemed so distant now. Back in her old life, she had been someone's mother, a woman who worked hard to take care of her family, a person who lived with simplicity. But now, she was in the middle of something far greater than she ever could have imagined, and there was no going back. The truth hit her harder than she wanted to admit. This wasn't just a temporary situation. She was in the midst of a supernatural world, a world that had both beauty and danger in equal measure. We're almost there. Adrian's voice cut through her thoughts, low and steady. Mia looked over at him, her heart racing. His face was stoic, but his amber eyes flickered with something else, something she couldn't place. Was it worry? Or was it just his nature to remain calm, to hide his emotions behind that impenetrable wall? She couldn't tell. "You're sure this place is safe?" she asked, her voice trembling despite her efforts to sound composed. Adrian's gaze softened for a moment as he turned to her. "I trust my ally here," he said simply. "But we have to stay alert. This is only temporary. We'll figure out our next move once we're inside." As the car pulled into the hidden driveway, Mia felt a sense of unease. The mansion they arrived at was even more secluded than the last, hidden away behind tall gates and overgrown trees. It was a far cry from the opulent estates Adrian had shown her so far, and its isolation felt almost suffocating. But as they entered the house, Adrian's demeanor seemed to relax, just slightly. The place was dimly lit, with sparse furniture and an almost sterile feeling. It was clear that no one had lived here long, but the security and secrecy were apparent in every corner. "This will work for now," Adrian said, his voice echoing off the empty walls. Mia nodded, trying to calm the storm of thoughts in her mind. She had been through so much in such a short time, and now, in this strange house, she couldn't help but feel more like a prisoner than a guest. Adrian led her through the house, stopping at a room with a large bed and simple, elegant furniture. "You can stay here," he said, his voice soft, as he stepped back to give her space. Mia stood in the doorway for a moment, uncertain. "What about you?" she asked. "I'll be nearby," he said with a reassuring smile. "I'll be here if you need anything." But Mia wasn't sure if she wanted to be alone right now. The house felt too quiet, too empty, and the weight of their situation was settling in. She couldn't escape the feeling that there was more danger looming, even here, hidden away in this isolated place. As Adrian turned to leave, Mia caught his arm. "Adrian, I need to know something," she said, her voice wavering slightly. He turned back to her, his eyes steady, waiting for her to speak. "What's going to happen now? How long do we stay here before we have to move again?" Adrian's expression softened, and he walked over to her, taking her hands in his. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice low and honest. "But we're in this together, Mia. I won't let anything happen to you. Whatever happens next, we'll face it together." His words were comforting, and yet, they didn't ease the growing unease in her chest. How long could they keep running? How long would they be able to stay one step ahead of whoever was hunting them? She didn't have an answer. She just had to trust Adrian. "I'll be right outside," he said, giving her one last reassuring look before he stepped out, closing the door softly behind him. Mia stood in the room for a moment, her heart heavy with uncertainty. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that everything would be okay, that they would be able to fight whatever was coming. But the reality of the situation was hard to ignore. She was in the middle of a world she didn't fully understand, surrounded by dangers she couldn't see or prepare for. As the silence of the house enveloped her, Mia couldn't help but feel the weight of it all. Adrian had made her a promise, but as the night dragged on, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The door opened, and Adrian reappeared, his expression grim. "We need to talk," he said, his tone serious. Mia's heart skipped a beat. The calm before the storm was always the hardest part. She followed him into the living room, her steps slow as she tried to keep her composure. "What is it?" she asked, her voice steady, though she could feel the tension creeping up her spine. Adrian's eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw something in them, something more than the cool, collected vampire king. There was fear there, too. "They know we're here," he said softly, "and they won't stop until they get what they want." Mia felt the weight of his words settle in her chest like a stone. The game was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun. The moment Adrian spoke those words, the weight of them crashed down on Mia. "They know we're here," he said softly, the gravity of his words sinking in as if the air itself grew thicker. It wasn't just the usual dangers that loomed over them anymore. It was imminent. The kind of threat that made Mia's pulse race and her heart drop into her stomach. The last thing she wanted to do was be part of Adrian's dangerous world, but here she was, stuck in the middle of it, with no way out. "Who exactly knows we're here?" Mia asked, her voice steady, even though her insides were anything but. Adrian didn't hesitate. His eyes locked onto hers, the amber hue that usually held a certain warmth now darker, colder, filled with warning. "My enemies, Mia. The ones who want power. They know I've been hiding you. They know you're important to me." Mia swallowed hard, trying to digest the full meaning of his words. This wasn't just some casual threat. This was the kind of danger that could tear their lives apart. "Why me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Adrian took a deep breath, his hands gripping the back of a nearby chair. "Because you're the one thing I can't control, and they'll stop at nothing to use you against me. But I won't let them. I will do whatever it takes to keep you safe." Mia nodded slowly, but doubt still lingered in her mind. "How do we get out of here? How do we protect ourselves?" Adrian's gaze softened, but the urgency in his eyes didn't fade. "We don't leave, not yet. We stay put. I'll take care of the rest." His voice was firm, but his words only brought more questions. Mia didn't want to feel helpless, but she couldn't deny the reality of their situation. They were surrounded, and her role in all of this was something she still didn't fully understand. Adrian continued, "We have allies, people who can help us. But they're scattered, and we need to be careful who we trust. I don't want you to get caught in the middle of this any more than you already have." Mia wanted to argue, wanted to insist that she was just as capable of fighting as he was, but she held her tongue. Adrian's world was not hers to control, and no matter how much she hated feeling like a pawn, she had no choice but to trust him, for now. "What happens when they come for us?" Mia finally asked, the fear in her voice barely concealed. Adrian's expression hardened. "We fight. We don't run." His words were resolute, but there was something else in his voice, a quiet admission of how dangerous this could get. "Mia, I won't let them hurt you. But we need to be ready. No more running. This ends now." There was no doubt in his voice, only a certainty that made Mia's heart race with a mix of fear and adrenaline. She had been trying to resist this life, trying to push away the truth of what Adrian really was. But now, the reality of the situation couldn't be ignored. She was in this, for better or worse. "Okay," Mia said, her voice trembling, but firm. "I'm in this with you. Let's do this." Adrian nodded, and for the first time in days, Mia saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. It was faint, but it was there. "Good," he said softly. "We'll make it through this. Together." The rest of the night passed in a blur. Adrian made arrangements, speaking in low tones with his contacts, securing the estate's perimeter, and preparing for whatever came next. Mia was left alone in the main room, pacing back and forth as her mind raced. She couldn't help but replay everything in her head. How had she ended up in this mess? She was just a single mom, trying to make a life for herself and her kids. How had she become a pawn in a centuries-old war she had no place in? But even as her mind spun, she couldn't deny the pull she felt toward Adrian. There was something magnetic about him, something that made her want to believe that everything he said was true, that he could keep her safe, that they could find a way out of this together. A sudden knock at the door interrupted her thoughts, and she jumped, her heart racing. "Mia," Adrian's voice called softly from the other side. "We need to go? Now." Mia's pulse quickened. She knew it was time. They couldn't wait any longer. Whatever was coming, whatever was lurking in the shadows, it was time to face it. She stood up, quickly heading toward the door where Adrian was waiting for her. His face was unreadable, but his eyes held a fire that was hard to ignore. "Ready?" he asked, his voice low, almost reassuring. Mia nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. "As ready as I'll ever be." As they stepped outside, the cool night air hit her like a wave. The weight of the unknown was heavy on her shoulders, but she refused to show any fear. She had made her choice, and there was no going back. Adrian led her toward a sleek black car waiting by the gate, the engine purring softly in the stillness. "Where are we going?" Mia asked, glancing at him as she climbed into the car. Adrian didn't answer immediately. Instead, he started the engine and pulled onto the road, his eyes scanning the street. "Ahead. We're going to meet my allies," he said finally. "They're the only ones who can help us now." The car sped through the streets, and Mia could feel the weight of the night pressing in around them. Everything was happening so fast, and she wasn't sure what to expect. But one thing was certain. Whatever came next, she was ready to face it. With Adrian by her side, she knew they could survive anything. As the city lights blurred in the distance, Mia finally allowed herself to relax, just a little. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was part of something bigger than herself. She had no idea where this path would lead, but she wasn't alone anymore. And that was all that mattered. The drive to meet Adrian's allies felt endless, the night pressing in around them like a heavy fog. Mia sat in the passenger seat of Adrian's sleek black car, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. The city lights outside blurred, and the silence between them was thick with tension. Adrian's face was set, focused on the road ahead, but Mia could see the strain in his jaw and the way his hands gripped the steering wheel. She could feel the weight of the situation settling on her, and for the first time since this nightmare had started, she felt a cold, creeping fear that she couldn't shake. Adrian had been confident, reassuring even, but Mia knew the truth now. They were being hunted. She wasn't just a bystander in this world anymore. She was part of it, whether she liked it or not. The thought sent a chill through her, and she found herself questioning everything. How had she gotten here? From a simple life with her kids to being part of a deadly game she didn't understand? Adrian had warned her that this life wasn't without its dangers, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of it. She glanced at him, her mind racing. She wanted to ask him more questions, to dig deeper into the world he had pulled her into, but she held back. She could feel the tension in the car, the unspoken understanding that now wasn't the time. She didn't know who or what they were heading toward, but one thing was clear, there was no turning back. "Adrian," Mia finally said, breaking the silence. "What happens if they find us?" Adrian's gaze flicked to her for a brief moment before he focused back on the road. "They won't. Not if we stay ahead of them. But if they do," he stopped himself, his voice hardening. "We fight. We protect what's ours. I won't let them take you from me." Mia felt her heart skip a beat at his words. There was so much conviction in his voice, so much certainty. But she wasn't sure if it made her feel safer or more terrified. He had promised to protect her, but the stakes were higher than anything she had ever known. And now she was trapped in a world where the only way out seemed to be survival. She had always been a fighter, but this was beyond anything she had ever imagined. She could sense Adrian's need for control, his desire to keep her safe. But Mia couldn't help but feel like a pawn in his game, her role defined by his world, not her own. She wasn't sure how much longer she could keep pretending that everything was going to be okay. As they neared their destination, Adrian slowed the car, his eyes scanning the streets with a practiced wariness. Mia could feel her pulse quicken as the tension in the car became almost unbearable. Where were they going? Who were these allies, and could they really help them? Adrian didn't speak as he drove, his expression unreadable. The car turned down a narrow street, the buildings on either side dark and abandoned. The air seemed heavier here, the shadows thick with uncertainty. They stopped in front of a plain, nondescript building, nothing like the grand estates Adrian had shown her before. "This is it," Adrian said, his voice low and steady. Mia's heart skipped a beat. "It doesn't look like much." Adrian smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Sometimes the safest places are the ones that look the least inviting. He turned off the engine and opened the door, stepping out quickly. Mia followed, her feet heavy as she stepped into the cold night air. The building loomed before them, dark and quiet, with no sign of life. "Is this really the safest place?" Mia asked, her voice laced with doubt. Adrian looked at her, his eyes softening for just a moment. "It's the best we have. Right now," he said. "You have to trust me, Mia." Mia nodded, though doubt still gnawed at her. She wanted to trust him, but everything about this situation felt wrong. The weight of the unknown was suffocating. She had followed Adrian into this dangerous world, and now, there was no turning back. They approached the door, and Adrian knocked twice in quick succession. Mia's heart pounded as she waited for a response. The door creaked open, revealing a tall man with dark hair and sharp features. His eyes flicked over Adrian with a familiar recognition before settling on Mia. "This is Mia," Adrian said, his voice calm but firm. "She's with me." The man's gaze lingered on her for a moment before he stepped aside to let them in. "Come in," he said in a low voice. Inside, the building was dimly lit, and the air felt thick with the weight of secrets. Mia could see the outline of figures moving in the shadows, but there was no one who spoke. It was clear that this was no ordinary place. It was a hideout, a refuge for people who operated in the dark. Adrian led her to a small, quiet room at the back of the building. There, an older woman stood waiting, her eyes sharp and calculating as they met Adrian's. "We've been expecting you," she said. "You're the only one who can stop them, Adrian." Mia's breath caught in her throat as the woman's gaze flicked over to her. "And her," the woman continued, her voice low. "She's the key, isn't she?" Adrian didn't respond immediately, but Mia could see the shift in his demeanor. He didn't want to involve her in this any more than he already had, but the truth was now unavoidable. Mia was the one they were after. She was the one that would change everything. The woman turned her gaze back to Adrian, her eyes narrowing slightly. "You need to protect her at all costs." Adrian's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. "I know." Mia's mind raced as she tried to make sense of everything. She was the key, but to what? And what did it mean for her? Adrian had promised to protect her, but now, with the truth laid bare in front of her, she didn't know what that would look like. Could they really survive this? Would they really make it out alive? And would she ever be able to go back to the life she once knew? For the first time, Mia wasn't so sure. The room was heavy with anticipation as the older woman's words echoed in Mia's mind. "She's the key." The words felt like a weight, like something that had been buried deep inside her, waiting to be unearthed. Adrian's presence beside her was a steadying force, but even he couldn't hide the tension in the air. He had always been the protector, the one who controlled every situation, but now Mia felt the gravity of the choice they were all facing. "What do you mean?" "I'm the key," she asked, her voice barely a whisper, the confusion and fear that had been building inside her finally breaking free. The woman who had greeted them didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stepped closer, her eyes narrowing as she took in Mia's expression. "There's a prophecy," she said quietly. "A prophecy that speaks of a human who will either bring about the downfall of the vampire realm or save it. You, Mia, are the one who holds the power to change everything." Mia's breath caught in her throat. She had heard stories of prophecies, but never thought they would be about her. She was just a woman trying to survive, trying to protect her family. "But I don't know anything about this world," she said, shaking her head, her voice rising with disbelief. I'm just a single mother. I'm not some key to a kingdom." Adrian's eyes softened, his expression full of regret, but there was also a fierce determination there. "You may not have chosen this, Mia, but you have a role to play, and we can't deny it any longer." Mia's mind raced as the weight of his words settled in. Everything had changed so quickly, and she was still trying to make sense of it all. She had stepped into a world she never imagined, and now she was being told she was the key to something much bigger than herself. "But why me?" she asked, her voice trembling with confusion and fear. "Why not someone else?" The woman shook her head slowly. "The prophecy doesn't explain why it's you, but you are the one who holds the power. It's inside you, Mia, whether you accept it or not." Mia's eyes darted to Adrian, seeking answers, but all she saw was the same calm, unwavering gaze that he always carried. "How do we fight this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Adrian stepped forward, his hand finding hers, grounding her in the present moment. "We fight together," he said, his voice steady. "We find a way to control the power inside you, and we use it to stop my enemies. This is our only chance." The truth hung in the air between them. Mia had never felt more uncertain in her life, but the fire in Adrian's eyes gave her a strange sense of resolve. She had come this far. She couldn't back out now. "I'm with you," Mia said, her voice firm despite the storm of emotions swirling inside her. "We'll face this together." Adrian gave her a small smile, his relief palpable. "Thank you," he said softly. "I promise you, Mia, no matter what happens, I will protect you. I will protect us." For a moment, it felt like they were the only two people in the world. But reality crashed back in as the older woman spoke again. "You don't have much time," she warned. "The forces that are after you are already closing in. You must prepare. There is no turning back now." Adrian nodded, his expression hardening with determination. "Then we'll prepare," he said, "and we'll make sure Mia is ready to face whatever comes next." They spent the rest of the night preparing, gathering what they could, and ensuring that Mia was trained to understand the power inside her. Adrian was there every step of the way, guiding her, showing her how to harness the strange energy that seemed to flow through her whenever she allowed herself to feel it. She had no idea what she was doing, but she trusted him, and that trust became the foundation they built everything on. As dawn broke, casting its first light over the hidden estate, Mia stood with Adrian at her side. She felt a strength inside her that had been dormant for so long. The power was real, and she could feel it pulsing through her veins, just beneath the surface. Adrian turned to her, his expression soft but filled with resolve. "Are you ready?" he asked. Mia nodded, her heart steady. "I'm ready." Together, they stepped out into the unknown, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it as one. There was no turning back now. They were in this fight together, and Mia knew that whatever happened, she would never be alone again. Vampire stories have always captivated audiences with their mix of danger, romance, and the supernatural, and this thrilling narrative is no exception. In a world where vampires rule and humans are caught in the crossfire, a single mother is pulled into a deadly game after unexpectedly encountering a vampire king. As secrets unravel and dark forces close in, she must navigate this treacherous world where betrayal and loyalty are tested. What starts as a chance encounter between a vulnerable human and a powerful vampire evolves into a story of survival, love, and a prophecy that could change everything. These vampire stories are filled with twists, as the human protagonist discovers her pivotal role in a centuries-old battle. As her relationship with the vampire king deepens, so does her understanding of the dangerous power she unknowingly possesses. With enemies on their tail, they must stay one step ahead in a world where no one can be trusted. Get lost in these vampire stories that blend heart-stopping action with the emotional intensity of forbidden love. The fate of both humans and vampires rests in the hands of one woman, and only by embracing her true strength can she hope to survive the chaos that is about to unfold. As the story builds to an explosive conclusion, the line between ally and enemy blurs, and the human protagonist must decide if she is ready to embrace her destiny in this thrilling world of vampire stories.